Good morning. Welcome, dear friend. Long-standing friends and new friends. So nice to have your company this morning. Today I'm looking at Romans chapter 4. If you get the chance today to read the whole chapter, it's well worth reading because I can only skim over it in my brief time as a thought for the day. Otherwise it'll become too long. But it's all about Abraham. And if you also get the chance to read Genesis chapters 13 to 17, you'll get the whole story of what happened in Abraham's life. He was called Abram first, and then his name was changed to Abraham, but he's referred to by Paul as Abraham throughout this passage. And what he's talking about is the fact that Abraham did not keep the law. He was not under the law. And he was justified by faith. We know the law was given through Moses, much later in the history of the people of God. After Abraham's descendants, after Joseph went into Egypt, led the people in Egypt, and God brought them out after the 400 years that they were. Anyway, the law came much later. And Abraham heard God speaking to him, calling him, and he followed that call. And several times God said to him, I'm going to make you the father of many nations. Your descendants are going to be a huge number of people. And he had no son. He hadn't even got one son. I mean, lots of people in the Bible had lots of children, but Abraham didn't have any. And he had reached an age when God's promise came a second time to him that his descendants would be as numerous as the stars in the heaven and the sand on the seashore. He believed God, and it was reckoned to him as righteousness. It says that in Genesis 15 verse 5. He believed God, even though he was too old, very elderly. He was at least 80, we think, when that promise was given to him. He certainly was 99 when the promise came again to him that he would have a son, and that the son that he and his wife had given him her slave girl, and he'd had Ishmael, and Ishmael was 13 years old when Isaac was born. But Sarah and Abraham, Sarah was very elderly, and so, Abraham was 99. And it was impossible physically for them to have a child. But God promised, and Abraham believed the promise of God, even though it was impossible. He believed the promise, and because he believed the promise, it was reckoned to him as righteousness. And it was after he received the promise a second or maybe even a third time that he, as a sign of his agreement with God, he circumcised his family. So he believed God before he was circumcised. So Paul's argument here is that circumcision and the law, neither of them guarantee salvation. Neither of them. Abraham, it was his faith in God. The circumcision came later. This is very like what I've been talking about several times this week. The fact that we are saved by grace, by what Jesus did. But once we're saved, we do things to show that we're saved. And this is what Abraham did. He believed God, he trusted God, and when God said, it's time for you all to be circumcised, he accepted that, and he circumcised everyone, every male in his family. He wasn't saved by the circumcision, but the circumcision was a sign of his right standing with God and of his relationship with God that he lived by. And it was probably, it was at least 13 years between the promise and the circumcision, probably longer, about 20 years we think. But the scriptures don't tell us everything. They don't say, and when Abraham was this age, and when he was this age, and when he was this age. But it does tell us when Ishmael was born, when Abraham was 86, And Isaac was born when Abraham was 99, perhaps 100, because he was 99 when God said, next year you'll have a son. And sure enough, Sarah had Isaac. So this chapter is talking about being justified by faith. That's what it is for us. It is faith. For Abraham, it was faith. He believed God. But the point I wanted really to underline for us today is that Abraham believed God's promise, but he had a long wait for it to be fulfilled. And that is the thing I felt we should focus on today, is that maybe you've had a promise, maybe you've believed God for something, and it's been a long time coming. Well, the assurance here is that maybe it is a long time. It was a long time for Abraham. I mean, 20 years is a long time, especially when you're in your 80s and 90s and time is running out. How could God keep his promise? But he believed God, and God reckoned it to him as righteousness. And Paul makes this great statement here. It's in verse 11 of chapter 4 in Romans. The purpose was to make Abraham the father of all who believe without being circumcised, and who thus have righteousness reckoned to them, and likewise the father of the circumcised, who are not merely circumcised, but also follow the example of the faith which our father Abraham had before he was circumcised. A lot of circumcised there, but it means he believed God, so all those who have believed God who are not circumcised, he represents them, but he also represents all those who have been circumcised, but are not circumcised just in the flesh, but their hearts are tuned into God, and they are saved because of the faith in their hearts, not because of the ritual that they've undergone. We're not saved by the ritual we undergo. We're not saved because we were baptized into the church. We're not saved because we've always gone to church. We're not saved because our family have always gone to church. We're not saved because we take communion. We are saved because Jesus died for us. And we do all the other things because we believe in him through faith, but we don't do them in order to be saved. There's only one salvation, and that is through faith in the finished work of Jesus Christ. And Abraham is thus our father, Father Abraham, a great example of faith. Before even Jesus came, he trusted God to do what he promised, even though it took years for it to come about. Have a great day. God is a promise keeper. A promise keeper. If he promised you something, he will see it out. He will bring it to fulfillment. Trust. Don't doubt. Hold on. It's coming. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.